let's put it in all the proper context. Today, at about 9:55 Eastern, we had University of Michigan Sentiment Survey. It's one of the two confidence surveys. We get one from the Conference Board every month as well. And that survey this morning, I brought it out live on CNBC, dropped to the lowest level since May of 1980. So a 31-year, 3-month low. Next, that confidence you talk about, I always refer to it as fairy dust. It's kind of magical. Nobody knows exactly how to recreate it, and once you lose it, it's very difficult to get it back. So yes, I never put much stock in surveys, okay? Because to me, surveys are very omnibus. They're very cloudy. But in this instance, when you get these extremes, it is important. It tells me the magic fairy dust that makes consumers consume, makes it so Americans don't go to sleep wondering, like, what country am I going to wake up into tomorrow? That makes it difficult to replace. So we get to see, how can we replace it? I think it's so much easier. The White House just is stalwart on ideological fronts, and I think that it has to change. But the first thing I would do is basically change the tax code both from a corporate and from an individual standpoint. Consider, they keep trying to put this wedge between the classes. Close to 40% of all taxes is paid by that top 2%. That is just the craziest argument I have ever heard, especially when we have an addiction to spending. And a good analogy is, in an average household, let's assume the husband works and the wife doesn't. I'm not being sexist here. It's just for this analogy.
No.
If the wife starts spending 30% more in one given year, and the husband says, hey, what's going on here? We need to cut spending. And her answer is, well, you should get a second job. I think that's a good analogy, okay? But we need to make sure that we get that under control. If we put a consumption tax, and this isn't new stuff, instead of what we have now, I think that the wealthier Americans, their consumption is a very good thing. We shouldn't, vilify success. We shouldn't vilify entrepreneurs. And if they want to live large, I think it would generate lots of taxes. On the corporate side, there's a lot of disingenuous talk, Alex. The effective rate indeed is much, much lower than the advertised rate of what 35.9, we'll say 36%. There are many companies, GE, we had the head of Coca-Cola on not long ago. These companies, and they're not doing anything wrong. They have tax departments, and their job is to respond to shareholders and maximize the write-offs. But unlike an individual, if you or I have a bad year, we get to write off $3,000 a year. They can write off their hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of losses and roll it over. But what we need to do is separate some of those which are kind of, feeding at a trough. They're not, in my mind, paying what they should. We need to change some of these, but they're not loopholes, as politicians call it. It's the tax code they created.
It's the code, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It needs to be changed. And smaller companies that generate lots of jobs don't have those huge accounting departments, the huge army of lawyers, and they get stuck actually paying the advertised rate. Those two things alone would make a marked difference and bring back some of that fairy dust.
Now, I've said on my show before, and I've said it to people privately and personally, and I'm very vocal about it, I think the economy needs to file for a restraining order against the Obama administration because I firmly believe that he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just, it's proverbial political tactic, and it's kicking the can down the road, but it seems like he's almost intentionally putting a noose around the economy with, letting the regulatory environment run free. And I asked Senator Mike Lee on this last week when I interviewed him, and he basically agreed with that. Now, I want to ask you, do you feel that Obama's just incompetent on the economy? Do you feel that he's fit for the job at all? Is he the guy that can lead us out of this mess? Because it doesn't seem like he has a pivot point. But I want to get your opinion on this because, it just, all indications make it seem that he's just clueless on what he's doing outside of his core radical ideology.
Well, I would probably answer it this way. I'm from Chicago. Barack Obama was a senator in Illinois. I didn't see a lot of legislation that had his signature on it, okay? And I've always been a simple guy, Alex. I look at life simply. I like common sense. It goes a long way, whether it's markets or in life. If you go to a cobbler, he's going to want to fix your shoes. You go to a Midas shop, they're going to tell you need a new muffler. We elected a community activist, okay? So you can put the rest together any way you want. And to be fair, the Bush administration, the prescription drug program. I wasn't very fond of that at the time either. So there were spending issues that really go back even further than the president. But it isn't only about spending. Whether it's Tim Geithner, Larry Summers, I just think that we have a crew, and even though the crew has changed with this administration, that, yes, in my opinion, they're not only over their head. If they were in a swimming pool, they would be looking at darkness on a sunny day. It's so far over their head. I think as Treasury Secretary, Mr. Geithner is not, in my opinion, doing a great job. I don't think he was doing a great job when he was head at the Bank of New York. I think that when you look at how they fit in, the head of that bank is supposed to have certain regulatory duties. I think he was asleep at the switch. I think Mr. Summers and that crew was instrumental in some of the issues that reversed Glass-Steagall, which I think was a big mistake, with the Enron exemption that led to all these derivatives. You know, I have no problem with intellectual, creative trading vehicles. In my opinion, you don't ban a derivative. What you do is you margin it accurately, okay? If you want to create these products, which I personally think are somewhat destructive, fine. But you have to put down a boatload of capital or have your clients who buy them put a boatload of capital down. And that isn't being done. And when you write over 2,000 pages of regulatory reform about trying to address the causes of the credit crisis, and in my opinion, not only do you not address the simple things, you know, what do debit card swipes and Mr. Durbin's add-on into that have to do with the credit crisis? This is crazy. And I think that these issues of the credit crisis, in the words of Rahm Emanuel, who, of course, was with the president, now happens to be mayor of my city, and nothing against him one way or the other, but, you know, the famous line, never let a crisis go to waste, did so much damage because at a time when we had the credit crisis in the summer and fall of '08 in this country, instead of hunkering down and looking at jobs, instead of writing simple, easy regulation that could have been, you know, Glass-Steagall, I believe, was 20 pages, and it lasted for, 60, 70 years? To come up with some of these programs, to get lost in health care, it's just an insult. And shovel-ready was a joke from the beginning. Anybody who's dealt with trying to get a permit to build an addition onto their house understands there's nothing that has to do with the government that's shovel-ready. We were sold a bill of goods. Now, we look back, and we need to spend some money. I agree. There's infrastructure. But that group of 535 between the House and the Senate, even though there's some newcomers that I respect, they're not trustworthy with our tax dollars. So some of the things they should have done, they said they would do that they didn't, may still be good ideas. But unfortunately, we don't have the right people in government to trust them to try it again.
Right. It's not the system that's broken, as many people say. It's the people in the system. And the fact that people, when they hear the system is broken, they don't participate in it anymore.